Good? Good. I want to welcome everybody and those watching on TV. We have this special informational meeting on our sewer bond issue coming up August 6th, 2024.
I think Mr. McCliney was going to start.
Me and Mr. McCliney, yes.
Mr. McLean is going to do, they're going to do all the talking.
I don't want to do all the talking, but I will do all the talking. The city has two things we have to recognize. The major issue is we have projects, or you have projects, that must be addressed, must be taken care of. The current one, there is one that is 1.7 million, is that right?
More or less.
1.7, 1.8 million dollars that must be addressed. There's not a choice. DNR has come in and said, you can do it with our help, or you can do it without our help. And what they mean by help is really why you're voting a bond issue. So it's a good picture, because this is the major project that we're talking about. We're also voting additional bonds. The reason we're voting additional bonds is not because everybody wants to issue more bonds, but because it gives you more opportunities to get grant money and get additional help. The Department of Natural Resources, for example, on the water, currently is doing something called a lead survey. Is that right?
Lead service line inventory.
A lead service line inventory, and they give some grant money for that, and they seem very friendly about it. Rest assured that in about 2 years they're going to say, oh, by the way, we have the inventory and you have to replace everything that has any lead on it. I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure they're doing the right thing. I'm really not sure they're doing the right thing, but I'm quite sure that it is coming down the pike. What you want to do with a bond issue, if you take the time to put it in front of people, is you don't want to have to keep going back for bond issues. The city can go to the market anytime it wants without an election. You can do it with something called a lease purchase or a certificate of participation. It's a type of lease, and you can borrow for 20 or 25 years. The interest rate today is probably a 4.5%. Now, the opportunity I talked about was if you vote bonds, and obviously they pass, your interest rate goes to 1.75% fixed for 20 years. So that's the opportunity, that's the major opportunity that the Department of Natural Resources, when they're coming in with their, it's a carrot and a stick. When they come in with that stick, they're saying, oh, by the way, we're going to help you 175. Now, on top of that, with voted bonds, with your share going forward, they'll also provide grants a lot of times. And I don't know whether they're going to give you a 10% grant or a 50% grant. It's probably not going to be a 50% grant, but they have been very forthcoming with grants lately. So, but the only way to do that, again, is to put yourself into a position. And so really what it comes down to is you're being forced, they backed you into a corner. Department of Natural Resources and said, you've got to fix this. There's going to be more projects. Do you want to do it inexpensively? And it's never inexpensive, it's expensive. But do you want your borrowed interest rate to be the lowest possible, fixed, or do you want to go to the general market and do it at a 4.5%? It's a lot easier not going to the ballot box. It's a heck of a lot easier for me to say, hey, no, we'll just go and borrow money, it's easy. 4.5%, still a good interest rate. But the right thing to do and the right way to do this is to vote bonds, secure low interest rate loans through the Department of Natural Resources, and also take advantage of their time frame. They're just flat out slow. So we don't need a rate increase until they tell us to issue the debt. Now, on top of that, there is a brand new program that lets us borrow for the preliminary engineering without having to pay any interest. And so we will move that along as soon as, but again, we have to have voted bonds. So that's a short-term loan. It's going to be a 3% loan or a 3-year loan, but the interest rate is 0. And we've done the only one in the state, but we're we're proficient at it because we've done the first and the only. And so that's really, that is the message. Any questions before we get into the nitty gritty? Because I don't know any of this. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. And I'll get into some of the more technical aspects of why we're
Do you
asking.
want to tell the public who you are?
Yeah, I'm Travis Hernandez, Dr. Elegant Engineering, city's consulting engineer. I put together the facility plan for this facility. Been working with the city staff and leadership and navigating through MDNR's notice of violation. I guess on that history,
And I'm sorry to interrupt you one more time, but if you can just speak loudly,
Yeah.
because the mic's way over here.
And you also said notice of violation. What does that mean?
it means that the DNR was alerted to the fact that the city during times of high water, such as in this picture and such as last weekend, the previous weekend here, it's actually still underwater currently, the city generally shuts that lift station off due to two reasons. One, it's inaccessible safely for city staff to access that site. And secondly, the more pressing issue is that when that pump station runs during periods of high water, we get inundation of sewage into people's homes. And that's unsanitary condition. So it's been standard operating procedure for years, decades in fact, to shut that lift station off. DNR got an anonymous tip that the city was doing that, which resulted in an on-site inspection, which resulted in a notice of violation, because that's a violation of the Clean Water Act. And so DNR basically said you have 60 days to tell us what you're going to do. The city got a grant from DNR to put together a facility plan for this facility, which we completed, submitted, they approved, and the recommendation that came out of the facility plan was to relocate this lift station up against Washington Street right away at the Washington Street grade above the floodplain elevation, then reroute a force main, dedicated force main, all the way to the Gutenberg lift station, which would take the sewage flow off of the downstream residents. And so I'm going to go through this slide. About 9 slides I've prepared. And I hate reading slides, but I'll read it because I'm sure the folks at home is going to have to struggle to read the text. So just bear with me as I read. All right. And so the Board of Aldermen unanimously voted to place a question on the August 6th ballot for sewer revenue bonds in the amount of $15 million. This initiative is aimed at extending and improving the existing system over the next 2 decades, so the existing wastewater system. The proceeds of this bond will eventually fund the following improvements should they pass. The Lionsville lift station, which I briefly just explained. New UV disinfection equipment at the city's wastewater treatment facility in the industrial park. SCADA, which is a monitoring system and alarming system for all the city's wastewater sites, to expand that on the unmonitored sites. I'll provide a backup generator and transfer switch at all the remote sites to enable those sites to be able to be used during extended power outages. Purchase a sewer CCTV, so closed-circuit televised inspection camera with a trailer so that they can look at the interior of the play lines in town to start identifying projects for rehabilitation or replacement. The next one is a fairly large ticket item. It's collection system rehab. So once those lines would be TV'd and camera, we would prioritize those lines and start either replacing them or rehabbing them with like a non-digging technology such as curtain-placed pipe. Or if the pipe is too bad, we'd have to dig up and replace it and all. The next item is to address any future treatment limits we have at the wastewater treatment facility. The DNR has been enacting more stringent ammonia criteria for discharges. That will eventually affect the wastewater treatment facility. And then just the last one is just for the bond issuance fees. Any questions from the group?
Those are to be addressed over the next decade or 2, right?
Correct, except for the Lionsville lift
Right,
station.
that has to be addressed immediately.
Correct, sir. Yes, sir.
Does the city have the camera system now? I'm just curious.
They did. It's old and obsolete. Parts are hard to find.
And generator likewise?
They have 1 generator, yes. They have 5. They have several lift stations in town, though, so it'd be hard.
I'm just curious.
So we have 2 generators. One is sized for the industrial park well, and then the other one is sized big enough to run the lift stations. But we have to be able to move that thing fast enough to keep up with the flow from one lift station to the other. And especially with the Gutenberg lift station, that's pretty unlikely. I don't think that we can keep up with that rotation with the timing that it would take and keep this pumped down.
So that Gutenberg lift station takes a substantial amount of flow, I don't know the percentage, but it's greater than 75% of the flow, and transports it over across various hills, Calmar Bluff, et cetera, to get down to the industrial park. So that thing needs to stay in operation. Good? And I've touched on this, but I will retouch on it. The first project that we identified and was told by MDNR to address is the Alliance Field, or the ballpark lift station, as I call it. That cost is estimated to be $1.715 million, so 1715000. And like I said, the intention of that project is to solve the problem of the city having to turn that pump station off during times of high water events. As I said, it's currently located in a floodplain and inaccessible during high waters. In 2021, MDNR issued a letter of warning telling the city that we must solve this issue because of violation of Clean Water Act. The proposed project will relocate the lift station and build a new force main to Gutenberg lift station. This will ensure the continued safety, reliability, and efficiency of the sewer treatment system in town.
And there were what, at least 5 different other alternatives to this, to take care of the Lions Field lift station?
There was,
I don't remember, there was some.
yeah, there was 3.
And this is the one that DNR recommended, correct?
So I had 5. One was regionalization, so some of these aren't feasible. Regionalization would be to take the city's sanitary sewer system and regionalize it to another close by system, which that isn't going to work. Land application, we take those flows off the ballpark lift station and land apply them. We don't have real estate down there to do that, plus the floodplain, that won't work. So the next one was ballpark lift station relocation, which is this project here. I had looked at just building a dedicated force main at that existing site and leaving the lift station where it's at. And then I looked at building a dedicated gravity sewer, basically from Gutenberg all the way up to, I think, Mozart and 6th. That would take the flows off of, both those 2 options would take the flows off of the downstream users, but it would still make that site inaccessible during high flow events like we currently have. And that's why the relocation was a selected alternative. They clarified DNR, when engineers write these things and the city submits them, we basically tell the DNR what we would like to do, and they say, yeah, that's okay. No, it's not. So it's not like they told us to use this selection. Good. This is just a sheet that was in our facility plan. No, will I do that? No. So let me go in front of it. So just to orientate ourselves, here's Spring Creek running through town, Highway 19, First Street, Highway 100's up here. This is Gutenberg. The Gutenberg lift station is located on Gutenberg Street here. Ballpark lift station, our Lionsfield lift station is located in Lionsfield here. Currently, flows from this region of town flow to the ballpark lift station, Lionsfield lift station via gravity, and it pumps to a manhole located right here. And then from there, it flows via gravity all the way to Gutenberg lift station. So the recommended project would be to extend a gravity main at the current lift station site, run it to the right-of-way of Washington Street, construct a new lift station site here at Washington Street that is above grade, and then pump all the way directly to the Gutenberg lift station.
How deep does that have to go to get to Washington Street, your gravity flow?
And I had that profile. It was between 12 to 20 feet. Be a fairly deep sewer.
And the capacity would be enough to take care of any infiltration that you'd have down on the manholes along Frame Creek? I think I asked Jesse that, and he said it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, certainly when we would get the final design, we'd monitor flows here to capture what the peaking factor is and size that gravity band appropriately to handle those flows.
When the river's high, when the river's up.
Yeah, so the inflow and infiltration is not only a factor of when the river's high, it's a factor of when we actually get rain falling down on the ground. and that rain enters into the collection system, which can overwhelm piping systems. But through the final design, we install some portable flow meters in here to categorize that flow. And that would lead us into sizing the improvements, final sizing.
And you still think it would be only 1,700,000 to get the force main from Washington to Gutenberg Street?
Yes, I think I had a pretty conservative cost estimate built.
Okay. Just seems low to me. That's just I'm not an engineer.
So when I build these cost estimates, I'll generally look at our previous projects to try to get a feel of what the market's like. I did something similar in this one as well. Good.
On the rehab part of the 9 million that you're gonna send, what time frame do you have there? Is it a year, 10 years, 15 years? I'm just curious.
Let me get through this, it'll be another bullet on
Okay,
this slide.
that's fine.
Just for brevity, sorry. Hey, look here. Subsequent projects, in addition to the project I described, there's some more projects that we have identified. I'll go through these again. The next slide will address your question. So the first bullet point is replace the ultraviolet disinfection equipment at the city's wastewater treatment facility. That equipment is starting to get old, and parts are getting more expensive for that current equipment package that's sitting out there. We're going to install remote alarms, data logging, and controls, and SCADA panels at the remaining sites that are not currently on the city's SCADA system. Again, we procure a standby generator and install transfer switches at the sites that do not have transfer switches. We procure a remotely operated sewer inspection camera to assess the condition of the system's underground pipe network. And then in the future, whenever MDNR dictates, we would install additional treatment process at the wastewater treatment facility to comply with future lower ammonia limits.
And your SCADA system, you're saying not all of our sites have the system on it, so what are we
Correct.
talking about, your lift stations?
Yes, the lift station sites,
Not-
and the wastewater treatment facility is now on SCADA as well. I believe Gutenberg is, and that's the only remote site we're monitoring for the wastewater side and reserves. This slide is talking about the collection system. So again, we would rehabilitate and replace portions of the city's aged collection system. The system contains an underground network of manholes and piping, much of which is beyond its design life. The clay lines and brick manholes that are prevalent in the system have deteriorated over time through cracking, breakage, and tree roots. And each defect allows rain and groundwater to enter the system, which results in increased treatment costs because you guys are pumping that rainwater that doesn't need to be pumped to the wastewater treatment facility. And it also just overwhelms the system and causes regulatory issues in terms of things like having to shut those stations down. And so to answer your question, Jim, the reason why the city would like to have this sewer camera is because we could each year dedicate a portion of the city, TV that line, identify if it's a candidate for CIPP, so rehabilitation, or if it needs to be full replacement, and then we could budget that for the subsequent budget year. So in my mind, you'd have yearly expenditures going out to make yearly improvements for the wastewater collection system.
And ideally, those will go along with the street projects, a year or two ahead. When we cambered Schiller Street previously in the last month, we found several spots that need to be remedied prior to paving. So obviously, that's good to know, something that we don't have to come back to and dig up a brand new street later.
In the city, in the past several years, they've been having a yearly lining project, and this would be a continuance of that, provide means of funding that.
And then were these pictures taken with New Haven's camera?
Correct. This was all taken in the last month or so with New Haven's camera. I think, pretty sure everything I gave Travis here came from that little batch of cameraing, and that was right at 2% of the system. These aren't even close to all the problems, it's just the main problems. Just the ones that, like, you can see it, right? You don't have to know anything about sewer collection to know that's a problem.
So what Jesse's talking about, New Haven has a sewer camera on the trailer. It's a robotic camera that's on a cable. This tractor, I'll call the robot part of it, goes up and down the line. It has a TV head on it that's pan and tilt. And what you're seeing here is footage, stills from some of that footage. So in this photo, you can see blockage of the sewer. These are tree roots that have come in through a joint in a clay pipe. This pipe is nearly all the way blocked. We are still getting flow passed through here, but eventually this is going to become plugged and become a maintenance issue for the city and require that to be cleaned out. Again, we have tree roots here. The joint is probably right behind us. You can see how the tree roots are going down the line. The water flows this way. This is the next joint. It's actually this fifth photo right here, and you can see the stream of water coming through that joint. So it's a very high likelihood this is not wastewater coming into the pipe. This is groundwater, which does not need to be in the collection system because it's already clean. Additionally, you can see how this pipe joint has sagged down. We're seeing some damage at the bottom of the pipe. If this was a better photo, you could probably see earth and soil or bedding beyond this void. Just present this just to show you what the public generally doesn't see and wouldn't see because all of our wastewater infrastructure that I'm talking about is buried below ground. Unless you see it surfacing above ground, generally people don't realize what's going on. Questions, comments? So then how much will this cost? I presented costs to the board at previous meetings. I'll rehash these. So the immediate project we're talking about is the Lions, the ballpark field lift station. That has a $1.75 million price tag associated with it. Future phases, as I said, over a 20-year period, the life of the bond, we'd be looking at $300,000 for the UV disinfection equipment, $155,000 for the SCADA system expansion, $250,000 for the backup generator and transfer switches, $150,000 for the closed circuit TV inspection camera and trailer, and then $9.9 million for rehabbing the clay pipe in the system, and $2.3 million for ammonia treatment at the wastewater treatment facility.
Is that a priority that you do these in, or does?
So the priority now on our brains need to be on the ballpark lift station because you guys have regulatory burden on you to get that corrected. These would be at the purview of the board to identify which is the priority.
How much time would it take to move the Lions lift station? A couple months or 6 months or?
So we did the facility plan, but we still have to do preliminary and final design. So that's a 6-month to a year process, and then you have to procure a contractor and also get it bid out and built. So from today, it's a 3-year time frame probably.
But as long as the city is working on the issue and moving the lift station,
You're dead.
that's what DNR,
Yeah.
we're not gonna face any problems with interference with Department of Natural Resources, correct?
I can't speak for the Department of Natural Resources, but my experience, if you're working with them and you can show progress towards the goal, their goal, they will be very friendly to the city. It's when you ignore them is when they start to get enforcement hammering down on you.
They've been real good to work with the city of St. Louis. They've been on their list for the last 20 years. The stormwater runoff, billions of gallons. So yeah, they've really worked well with St. Louis.
You want to be a partner with the DNR as opposed to be an adversary.
Even though it feels like their adversary, if you vote bonds and you can and you have an engineer on board, they're happy as a bird dog, and they'll move things along. And if it takes 2 years to get this bid, it's 2 years, and they're not going to complain. It is really when you drag your feet that they start hammering again.
Yeah, one more slide. And then this is just to summarize why a vote is beneficial to the citizens of Hermann. As Mr. McClellan said, the city may borrow with lease obligations at any time without voters' approval. However, if we do vote bonds, they demonstrate our commitment to the DNR that we're serious about solving the problem and have dedicated the financial resources to get that problem solved. With voted bonds, we're able to borrow it from DNR at a fixed subsidized interest rate for 20 years at 1.75%. If you go to leasing options, that interest rate goes up to 4.5%. Also, if we vote the bonds in and get into this DNR's SRF program, that allows the city to apply for some grants that'll help lower the $1.75 million burden. Grants don't have to be repaid or a grant. So the big takeaway of yes vote will significantly reduce any user rate increases that are needed for these sewer projects, simply by the nature of the lower interest rate and also being allowed access to grant programs.
And the interest rate you have on there, that's not that's just the interest rate we're paying, it's not the final rate that, with all the other costs.
No,
figured
that
into
is, that's full in, that's 100%. So the DNR charges 1/2 of 1% annual fee. They call it a fee. I call it an interest rate. So right now their interest rate is about 1 1/4, but with their annual fee, it's 175.
Okay, but with the fee of closing and everything else and
The cost of issuance,
everything is in
those
there?
that's in there.
Everything's in there?
Everything we calculated cost of issuance for everything.
So the 1.75, is that a state DNR, federal?
That it's a federal program, but it goes through Missouri DNR.
Okay.
It's a state revolving fund for water and wastewater.
So the outstanding bonds we have now, which is 4,400,000 or something, will those be added on to this issuance or will it?
They're outstanding. You're not going to refinance those because the interest rate is good.
Okay.
I wonder if DNR typically won't refinance your outstanding leases with their money,
Okay.
but we can ask. That's a
All right,
good
just
idea.
curious.
That's why it's we're right now about 3.5%, so our interest rate may be closer to 3. So we have a really good interest rate. But if we could move our lease into 175, I will at least ask.
Anybody else? Questions? If not, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Can you stop this one in front of you, leave the other so that we get.
No, sir.
Thank you, Joey.